Welcome back to the Michigan Football Network. Today we are back with another episode of um, our season, I
Episode.
guess you could say,
Installment.
of another installment of our mock draft, which has been a blast to do over the past week and a half, 2 weeks or so. Myself, James, and Ryan all took about 11 teams. I know there's 32, so somebody was left with just 10, fortunately or unfortunately for them, however they feel about that.
That was
Some
enough.
people,
I'm
yeah,
good with
10
it.
was enough. That's what I figured.
More than.
Yeah, but with that being said, we already did the first round, the second round, and the third round live on the show. Go check those out on our YouTube channel if you have not seen them yet, because there will be spoilers in this continuation of the mock draft. So without further ado, the fourth round of the 2026 MFN NFL draft is now open. The Tennessee Titans are now on the clock with pick 101.
Yeah, the Titans aren't going to waste any time here. I've had a theme, as if anyone who's watched the other episodes with Tennessee, and just offense and surrounding Cam Ward with everything you can to make him um, reach his potential and also feel comfortable. I've seen several teams kind of throw a rookie quarterback into a bad situation and never really give them the help they need to reach their full potential. So earlier on, I went weapons. This time, I'm going to go with the trenches. I'm going to take Jalen Farmer, the guard from Kentucky. Um, he doesn't always move the best, I will say, but he is very strong at the point of contact, and I think he would help on that inside immediately for the Titans.
Yeah, and like you said, can't go wrong getting Cam Ward some more help, whether that be in the trenches or on the exterior of the offense. With that, the Oakland I did it again. The Las
Yep.
Vegas Raiders are now on the clock with pick 102. And no disrespect to you, Las Vegas Raiders owner slash GM Ryan.
The Los Angeles Raiders are on the clock. I'll go back to my original one. Yeah, no, I had fun having the Raiders because obviously beyond the first pick they needed a lot of help. But I went with a guy here that I figured Vegas. They got a lot of problems. They needed somebody that could give them a favor. So they needed Don Corleone. They needed a favor to be able to get further here. But this was a guy that was kind of all over the board. I like his backstory. I also like the fact that, obviously we talked about Galladay earlier, how successful he was at Cincinnati, and we've talked about the tie between linebacker and defensive tackle. This was the tackle that was in front of them. And how can you not pick somebody named Don Corleone? That's probably an older reference for some of the listeners, but it's still the Godfather. So, it's still relevant. But yeah, Dante Corleone from Cincinnati, the defensive tackle, space eater there. I feel like he is one that's gone the other direction. We see a lot of guys that are rapid ascenders up the board. He seems to be a little bit in dissension here and descending a little bit, but I still think he's got a pretty good value here for the fourth round.
Yeah, and once again, adding to the trenches of a rebuilding team is always a very good idea, especially considering what the Raiders have been needing for the past few years along their interior D line. With that, the Jets are now on the clock with the 103rd pick. And here we are going to go right along with you guys and stay along the trenches because, like we've said many times on the show, trenches are the way to build a team. And these are the worst three teams in the NFL. The Titans, I guess, aren't, but they're up there.
They're up
They're
there,
the
yeah.
fourth worst by our draft pick comp there. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and take Grayson Halton, the defensive tackle from Oklahoma. Kind of opposite to what you said about Corleone. I feel like Halton is a, uber explosive, first step quickness kind of guy. He's got a high motor. His real issues though are, he's got a little bit shorter arms. He's a little undersized at like 6'2", 290, 295. But that's right about where you want your explosive defensive tackles to be. So that's really not a big, excuse me. That's really not a big deal. But with that, we add to our interior D line with some explosivity. And obviously, he's going to lack in the run game a little bit, especially starting out. He lacks some, play strength. But we are happy to add some interior pass rush to our defensive line. And then with that, the Cardinals are now on the clock with the 104th overall pick. And we are going to actually shake it up a little bit. We're not going to go trenches. We're going to go running back Jonah Coleman. I know obviously the Cardinals, signed Tyler Algier this offseason. They obviously still have James Conner, and they obviously still have Trey Benson. However, Jonah Coleman here, I think, is just really, really good value to start off this fourth round. And, who knows? Tyler Algier, he's on like a 2-year deal, 3-year deal. So it's not a super long deal. It's not super expensive. And he's always been best as kind of like the second guy in the 1-2 punch. And I think, Coleman has the, ability, the athletic ability to be like a number one guy. He's good vision. He's a versatile player. He's got high, athleticism, high traits athletically. He does lack some power. But, with Tyler Algier there next to him, I don't think that's going to be too big of a problem. And it does feel like the Cardinals right now have kind of given up on Trey Benson. So we kind of do this to rejuvenate our running back room a little bit here. So with that, the Giants are now on the clock with the 105th overall pick.
So defense has been the focus, especially after the trade, where apparently they took less value than they got in real life here with the trade that they made with the Bengals. But still happy with the trade. They redid the defensive line, added a big-time linebacker. Need some help on offense. Need more weapons for Jackson Dart, and so I figured Jacoby Lane was a good fit opposite Malik Neighbors there. They've got an interesting receiver room. I think the receiver room's kind of gotten a little bit of a bad rap for being guys. This is a concept that happened a lot on the Lions. I always used to say, like, when Kindle Vildor would get up to the second corner, and people would be like, well, he's terrible as the number 2 corner. It's like, well, he was signed to be the number 6 corner. So not necessarily, he's a little out of his depth here. Same thing with some of these receivers. I think they're good depth receivers. They've got some guys that have some speed and some shiftiness to them. Now you're adding a big X-style outside guy opposite Neighbors. You added Hutchinson to that room, and now we kind of reformulated that Giants receiver room a little bit.
Yeah, and I think most people would agree that the Bengals probably overpaid a bit for Dexter Lawrence. So I think the trade we made was a little bit more what people expected value-wise. And with that, I totally understand adding some more weapons to that Giants receiver room because they desperately need it. The Texans now are on the clock with the 106th pick. And we need offensive line help all the way down the board. I think the Texans they put a Band-Aid on their offensive line the last few years. Obviously, it was a little bit a better Band-Aid. It was at least on-brand Band-Aid this time. Last year, it seemed they might have put a off-brand Band-Aid on that offensive line. But I think they feel a little bit better going into this season, so that's why we didn't necessarily attack that position early. However, our last pick was Jake Slaughter, the center from Florida, and we're going to stay along that. We're going to take Markel Bell, the offensive tackle from Miami. So back-to-back offensive linemen coming from the state of Florida. And really the reason is, he's got a ton of traits. His frame is insane. He's like 6'8", 330 pounds. Obviously, he's a very, very powerful player. He has good footwork. Really, his issue stems with consistency and technique. What's that, James?
I was just pointing higher. He's bigger than that. 6'9", 350.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, I guess
he's a massive person. He's on my lines right there.
Yeah, I guess I must have misread that somehow, but either way, yeah, massive person.
Huge.
And he's got all the physical traits that you want. And like I said, it's just consistency, and oversets and things like that, technical issues. But I feel pretty good getting him with the 106th pick. And now the Browns are on the clock with the 107th pick.
Yeah, Bell was going to go right here if you didn't take him, but he makes perfect sense for Houston, who also desperately needs O-line. But yeah, I don't want to go on a Lions tangent, but Bell is one of my fourth-round picks that I hope somehow, some way, the Lions can get their hands on. Hank Fairley with a guy of that size. Side note, I know last year he played every single game, did not miss a start, and did not give up a single sack all season. So Not too shabby for a guy you can get in the late third, early fourth.
Yeah, and honestly, like there's a few of those guys that actually are going to go to a couple of my teams here in the fourth and fifth round. Unfortunately for the Lions, but there's a handful of guys that along those lines have a lot of physical gifts and things like that that could be
A-
available around here.
Absolutely. That's why while doing this, which is once again, sorry, I'm not trying to take up time, but while doing this mock draft and looking at the depth of prospects as opposed to just like the top five at each position and whatnot, it is interesting to me just because you not only get a further in-depth look at the prospects and whatnot, but you can kind of see like, okay, with knowing these guys that can probably start day one, um, you can get in like the late third, early fourth, maybe that could um skew the Lions, for example. Let's say, what if they go like defense because of that, because they can get their tackle potentially elsewhere. Just food for thought. That's all. Um, and then continuing on with this with pick 107, I have the Browns going Chandler Rivers from Duke, the nickel corner, and he's another guy who kind of like Bell. I'm kind of surprised to see him here this late. He is small, only 5'9", 185, but that's why he plays the nickel corner. He has pretty good power in tackling. He's a good, strong tackler. He's not afraid to hit, not afraid to come down and run support. He's someone I feel like could actually make an impact as a rookie, and that's kind of hard to do. I feel like at a corner. I feel like corner is one of the hardest positions for rookies. So the Browns needing kind of like most of the teams that are starting the round here, a lot of help in a lot of areas will fill a need, in my opinion, with Rivers.
Yeah, and I do like the value there with Rivers, and obviously the Browns desperately need some corners, especially slot corners help. So that makes a ton of sense there. Now the Broncos are on the clock with the 108th selection.
I'm the Broncos as well, and I have them taking Delon Burks, a wide receiver from Oklahoma. I
Mm.
feel like with his elite speed, he ran a 4.340, and along with Mims, and kind of like we have here with the Lions with the Gibbs and JMO, you can never have too much speed on offense. And excuse me. And with a young quarterback like Bo Nix, kind of tying him to Cam Ward in terms of my approach for Tennessee, you can't have too many weapons around your quarterback. So with looking at the board, I thought he was kind of that guy that stood out more than some others. I know Stick to the Model has him as the 90th overall player, and I got him here at 108.
Yeah, personally, Deion Burks is one of my favorite players in the whole draft. Ever since I watched him absolutely tear us up, by us I mean Michigan, early on in the college football season. He
I
was a
blacked
guy I
that out.
definitely kept an right. He was definitely a guy I kept an eye out for coming into this draft process. And obviously the Lions don't need a receiver, but if he's there in the fifth round, it would be hard to pass on him, I think. And like you said, he getting him here at 108 is good value anyway. So I love adding him to that Broncos receiving room, especially after they just traded for Waddle. So they got a lot of speed over there. Now the Chiefs are on the clock with pick 109.
109, my lucky number, by the way. So I'm glad I got that number. I know it's an odd choice, James. Don't tilt your head at me.
I've
But
just never heard of a three-digit lucky number before.
well, that's why it's my lucky number, because it basically shows up a lot more than any other number, like 108, 110, even two digit numbers. So anyway, but yeah, the Chiefs. So as we've seen with a lot of these teams here, kind of building in the trenches, building inside out. They probably do need some edge help. Might see that later in the draft here, but they ended up going with Chris McClellan out of Missouri, reinforce the trenches, get somebody that can potentially slot in next to Chris Jones or behind Chris Jones. Obviously, you've got an elite defensive tackle there, guy that he can learn from. I'd want to they got Pickens recently too, but I'd want to get some young guys that can potentially be part of the succession plan when you have to lose Jones, but some guys that can learn under him and both slot in behind him, because we all know that for the defensive line you want a rotation, so he'll be part of the defensive tackle rotation here.
Yeah, and it's always smart, to have those succession plans. And also we mentioned, as we will always mention, the trenches. But Chris Jones is not getting any younger, so adding some interior help there makes a ton of sense. Now, with that, the Bengals are on the clock with pick 110.
So it's funny because obviously we had different teams. There's players that I liked maybe better, but I tried to do what I thought the team would do. So you're going to see maybe some tight ends coming off the board because we got a little stockpile of tight ends at this point in the draft. And that was a big need for Cincinnati. Maybe not my top tight end on my board, but for the Cincinnati board, I went with Michael Trigg out of Baylor, guy that kind of ascended uh, more recently in his college career, had a lot of production. Think he would pair well with Burrow and be a high production tight end there for him at a position that's really a pretty high need. I know tight end isn't necessarily like the biggest priority, but as far as when you look at their depth chart, that's one of their weaker positions at this point in time. So after shoring up a couple of the other maybe more important positions, they had to go with tight end. That, like I said, probably will have a little bit of a run because we were emphasizing other positions and we had kind of a glut of tight ends at this point in the draft.
Yeah, and I think it makes a ton of sense. Like you said, Cincinnati might have, or it might make sense for them to somewhat reach on a tight end here just because they do have a need, and I think Trigg makes sense for them. Now with that, we have the Broncos back on the clock with pick 111. You're muted, James. For those of you who watch the show religiously, this happened maybe 6 or 7 or 8 times last week. So let's see.
Let's 5, but
let's keep
still
the
more
count
than
going and see if James can break his own record of muting himself.
It's funny.
Can we have a
first
counter?
time after I went, I didn't mute myself, and I had to cough. I'm like, I should probably mute myself, but remember to do this. And remember to unmute. And then I didn't. I'm just so excited it's my turn to talk again, even though it wasn't that long. But all right. At pick 111, the Broncos, one of the nice things about having so many picks as the Broncos GM is they have I don't want to say a ton of holes as opposed, like, obviously every team has a few. They have more than I think the average team, but less than obviously like Tennessee and Cleveland and some of the other teams I control. And this guy has a little bit of local flavor just because he had a visit with the Lions. So, guy to potentially keep your eye out. But at 111 here, I have Deontay Lawson, inside linebacker from Alabama. He is a solid overall linebacker. Like I said, I'm gonna bring him up because, like, obviously he's my pick, but I'm not gonna try to pretend like he's, a top 100 guy. That we are talking, fourth round here. But he had a slight setback from last year in terms of his stats: less tackle for loss, less sacks, overall more tackles, but he played in one more game, so it kind of is a wash on that point. But at one point in time, he was deemed like a mid-second round pick. I think he was around 45, 46 overall. And now he's fallen, at least in this mock and in the stick to the model rankings, into the hundreds. So slight fall for him, but kind of a potential very high-end, high-ceiling player. And I feel like he can fit in nicely with the plethora of talent that Denver has in that room.
Yeah, and getting yourself another linebacker after they did lose a few the last like 2 years. Obviously they got rid of Greenlaw, so they do need some more help there at the linebacker spot. So that makes a ton of sense. With that, we have a traded pick up next. The Cowboys would be on the clock, but they traded this pick to the Colts along with let's see here, Terrence Steele
Yes.
for Kenny Moore, the nickel cornerback. So the Colts got themselves a right tackle for this year, probably not for the future, but for this season, and pick 112. And with pick 112, we are going to take Rayshawn Benny, the interior defensive lineman from Michigan. I'm a really big fan of Benny. Obviously, we watch him, every Saturday, watching Michigan a ton. And I think this is good value here. He's a solid penetrator from the interior. Obviously, he has his issues, but I really like the value that I got here. And the Colts need some help on their interior defensive line past, DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. So for some reason that didn't sound right, but that is that guy's name. I don't know why that didn't sound right when I said it, but with that, we added to that defensive line room with Rayshon Benny, who I think has a pretty high ceiling, coming up to the next level. So, with that, the Indianapolis Colts are on the clock yet again. Back-to-back picks here, and which is part of the reason why we felt pretty good taking pick 112 in that trade, simply because if we felt like it, we could trade down. But here we felt both players were worth keeping instead of trying to move down. And our second pick with 113 is Harold Perkins, the linebacker from LSU. Similar to what we just mentioned with the Broncos, the Colts lost some linebackers this offseason with Zaire Franklin getting traded over to Green Bay. Obviously, they're not going to replace him one-to-one here with, Harold Perkins. However, I think Perkins has a super high ceiling in the NFL as long as he can find a niche. Like, he's a very tweener type of player. He's not a pure linebacker, nor is he a pure safety. He's also not a pure edge rusher, but he can kind of do a little bit of everything. So I really like adding him to this Colts defense. I would say linebacker room, but I'm not even sure he'll play full-time linebacker here. So a little bit of a Swiss Army knife for the Colts there in the fourth round. Next up, we have the Eagles at pick 114 now on the clock.
One note on the Grover thing, is it because he shares a name with a Sesame Street character? Is that why it doesn't sound right? And he also has two first names. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the last name sounds more like a first name.
As long as there's not a snuffleupagus in this draft, it'll be okay.
That would be awesome. I would draft him higher than he should go, just so I could say that name. But speaking of
Markel Bell might be him. So we'll
there you go. That could be a nickname, maybe. But
that dude is so huge.
Speaking of names that maybe are hard to say, maybe this is a guy that James avoided because he didn't want to say his name. And I have to admit, I haven't heard it said, so I don't know. Jace will have to name check me on this one. But again, tight ends. I view that as a need for a lot of my teams here. And Philadelphia kind of had some luxury picks to make. They obviously have Goddard, but you need a couple tight ends. So this would have been the guy that would have been higher on my individual board. But Nate Borgkircher of Texas A&M, good, solid overall tight end, good blocking in line, but has some receiving ability as well. So I thought he was a good fit with Philadelphia, even though I really wouldn't like to see him go to Philadelphia. But I thought he would be a good fit there because I think he'll be a pretty talented guy. And also a guy that I don't know if this is on your board, James, but a guy that some of the Lions fans have their eyes on too as a depth tight end.
Yeah, and he's definitely a guy that I have heard a ton about the last week or two. I feel like he's going to get drafted a lot higher than a lot of people think, simply because, these NFL teams, they watch these guys all year round. And unfortunately for us, a lot of, draft guys start watching their film after the season is over. Obviously, we all watch college football and things like that, but there are just so many players it's hard to keep track of. So I do see him being a guy that gets drafted a lot higher than, Twitter will think. So with that, I do think it's good value and a good fit, obviously, with Dallas Goedert likely on his way out of Philadelphia. Now, the Ravens are on the clock with pick 115.
I did not avoid him because of his name, but I will say when I saw it selected, I did say I'm glad I did not take him. So it was not a factor, but it was nice. At 115, I have Baltimore here, and not to beat a dead horse, trenches. Obviously, they lost Linderbaum. I had them take Vega in round 1. So here I'm going to have them take a center. I'll have them take Sam Hecht from Kansas State. I feel like along with Vega, that is putting a lot of there's no way to make it sound normal, but football players know meat in the middle of the line there. And he, in my opinion, is one of the better pass blocking centers, I will say, in this draft. So put him along with Vega. I do think his run blocking leaves a little bit to be desired, but when you're picking this late, at least you can keep Lamar Jackson clean. And in my opinion, if you had to pick one or the other, that's the most important part.
Yeah, and like I mentioned the last podcast we did, some other centers went higher than him, and I personally am a big fan of Sam Hecht. So I do think this is a good fit and good value here for Baltimore. With that, Tampa Bay is now on the clock with pick 116.
Oh, I guess that got cut off my list. Hold on, I got to go to my backup list here. I inadvertently must have deleted them.
Hear that,
So
Tampa fans?
what's that? Yeah,
Just
yeah,
giving
exactly.
you shit.
Exactly. But yeah, so I ended up going with I gotta pull up my list. Thankfully I've got to stick to the model here. So handled a few needs in the early going. I do think they need some help in the secondary. They made very good use of their secondary. I feel like for having a bunch of injuries last year, the guys acquitted themselves kind of nicely, kind of like the Detroit guys did. But Dalen Everett out of Georgia, I thought was falling a little bit, so I thought that was a good fit for Tampa to kind of reinforce the secondary and put another able body along with that unit that, like I said, kind of overperformed based on what you would maybe expect with how far down the depth chart they were at times last year.
Yeah, and I'm personally I'm a big fan of Everett, so I really like the value there, and I definitely think he makes sense for them. With that, we have let's see, we have the Raiders on the clock with pick 117.
So, yeah, ended up. So this is kind of interesting to me. I'd like to get your guys' opinion on this because obviously we have the big batch of tackles at the beginning and then kind of the mid tier. I feel like this is a guy that's kind of slipped a little bit, and it's not really. I don't know, maybe of his own volition, but he's kind of got lost in the shuffle. But Austin Barber, Florida. I feel like that's a pretty good value for a tackle in this draft. That's part of the reason I didn't necessarily target some of the guys that were in that middle ground because I felt like Barber is still in that however many micro tiers you want to make, but the second larger tier of the draft with the Tiernans and Dunkers of the world, but he's available a little later in the mock drafts. I don't know what's going to happen in real life, but he seemed like a guy that's got some ability. So since Vegas does need some guys to be in front of Fernando, you guys have already highlighted how they probably got Kirk to take some of the bumps from Fernando, but yeah, they need to make sure to build that line to keep Fernando upright, and I felt like he was a good value here in the fourth round.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. Definitely some good value at the tackle spot here in the fourth. With that, James, did you have anything to add there before we move on?
Yeah, I'm not gonna blow smoke. I have not watched any film on Barber, but I have looked at his stats at least on paper, and he has made starts at both left and right tackle at Florida. So he is at least versatile and whatnot. So that's always a plus later in the draft.
Yeah, definitely. Good point there. With that, the Detroit Lions are back on the clock with pick 118. And I think I got one of the steals of the draft here, in my opinion. Not only because I love the player, I also love the fit. And I'm just kind of surprised he was still available here. So we go with Takario Davis, the corner from Washington, 6'4", 200 pounds. Ran a really, really solid 40 in the 4.4s. Obviously, he's more of a press man cover type of guy, like Carlton Davis style of player. He does struggle a little bit in off coverage and things like that. But with what the Lions, ask out of their guys, I think, Takario is going to come here and get used the way that he will thrive. So I do really like the fit here, and I also really like the player value, like I said. And of course, he comes down and gets it done in the run game too. So that's something the Lions will really like as well. So obviously height, weight, speed, and he's got some, high ability coverage ability as well. So solid pick here in the fourth round, I believe, for the Lions. Anything to add there before we move on? Since this is a Lions show, we can take a little bit more time on our picks.
I'll let Ryan go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is a guy that's been mocked to the Lions a decent amount. You can see why. It's kind of like the Occam's razor pick at this point in the draft if he's there. I also think kind of on the Everett piggybacking off every point that I made, it seemed like corners were a little plentiful at this point, where that was one of the positions that maybe got kind of distributed later because of our emphasis on the trenches, which I don't mind because we've been clear about how we've been building the teams. But yeah, all of those things. This kind of reminds me of the Tesla pick, but on the other side, because it was like, yeah, they don't like to do the height, weight, speed necessarily, but it's like, hey, if you can have it and you can have it at value with a player that you like and that plays your style, well, then don't refuse it. Don't say, well, I want you to be 5 inches shorter and a little bit slower to take it and have the whole package.
For sure.
Yeah, I like him as well, and he's a very rare player when if you, how do I want to word it? If you just look at his statistics, I feel like this is a good player to judge whether someone knows ball or not when they talk about him. Just because if you look at his stats, the vast majority of them decrease each year in college. And that's not because he's getting worse, it's because he's not getting targeted. But his pass deflections went from 15 as a freshman to 6 as a junior and 4 as a, I'm sorry, 15 to 6 as a sophomore to 4 as a junior because people just stopped throwing to him. Like, he kind of, I don't want to quite say locks down the field, but he locks down his man with, as you mentioned, rare size. Not too many corners can match up, like literally inch for inch with the receiver in front of them, which is great for a press man guy. So I agree with you in terms of this might be, I would say, has the possibility to be one of the steals of the draft.
Yeah, and like you said, it's kind of tough to throw his way when he's 6'4", 200 pounds and can run like that. So, especially with the man coverage ability. With that, the Panthers are on the clock with pick 119.
Scrolling up here. So I'm back to the trenches here because we can't get too far away. The Panthers need some O-line help. Hadn't addressed it quite yet. They kind of went. They have a lot of needs, and they went with some of the better players on the board at those times. So now they're starting to hit some of the needs down the stretch. So I ended up going with, because there has been a run on centers and interior linemen. They wanted to make sure to grab theirs, so they grabbed Parker Brailsford of Alabama, interior lineman that's got a lot of ability, obviously from a premier program. And because the centers were running, wanted to make sure to kind of hit this when we could and get this now, because that's something that's not as plentiful on our board currently. And so now they solidify the interior of the offensive line, because obviously they lost their center to the Lions in the offseason.
Yeah, and the Steelers are not very happy about this selection because we were looking at Brailsford, so that might go into who we select in a few picks. Now the Packers are on the clock with pick 120.
Had a lot of picks in a row here. That's also why I haven't had a pick in like 30 picks. You guys have had the last 30 picks in the draft, so you got me out early, which is good. But yeah, again, Trench's pick. This is a guy that seems to be a little bit volatile on people's boards. He's all over the place. If you look at the different assessment organizations here, but I liked him. I saw a lot of him playing this year because I think I watched the weird combination. I only watched two teams every single game this past year. It was Indiana and Mississippi, because I was following along with the quarterback situation there, obviously with his ties to the area. So I ended up going Xavier Harris, defensive tackle out of Mississippi. I think he's a big space eater. He's got good athleticism for his size there. And I know he's not the same type of prospect, but he kind of gave me T'Vondre Sweat vibes as far as like his ability to move at that size, not necessarily the same ability, but for that value, for that round, it seemed like he would be a good one on the interior of the defensive line. And a good marker, you always use this, James, good marker is, since it's Green Bay, I wouldn't want to play this guy if I was the Lions. So that's one of the reasons I targeted him.
Yeah, and that's definitely a good way to to think about it. Like, oh, would I want my team to line up against this guy? If the answer is no, you should probably draft him.
Exactly.
With
I'm like,
that,
it's more
um,
nonchalant, but that's definitely something I look into.
yeah. With that, though, the Steelers are now on the clock with pick 121. And like I mentioned, we were looking at Parker Brailsford here. So we go with a different center. We go with a Brian Parker, so similar name, same position. And he out of Duke, high IQ, very powerful player, good athlete. He's got some versatility as well. He can play center or guard, being 6'5, 110. He has that ability to move all over the offensive line, which is nice because we do need center, but we could also use some guard help as well. And you can never deny versatility. And his issues, really, it's a lot of play leverage stuff, which can be fixed. So I really like the value here, getting what could be a starting center in the next few seasons in the fourth round. And then we have the Falcons on the clock, which is myself as well. And we go, we're going to go a little bit crazy here, and we're going to take a wide receiver. I know we haven't heard the position wide receiver in a long time, but we're going to take Jeff Caldwell, the receiver out of Cincinnati. Now, this guy literally tested as the most athletic wide receiver of all time. Obviously, that didn't always translate to tape last year, though, as his production was kind of iffy, and that's why he falls all the way to the fourth round. Obviously, like I said, he's an insane athlete. He's got a really good frame at 6'5", like 213, I believe, to be specific on his weight. But obviously, he doesn't have the Calvin Johnson 240 pounds on his frame, so a lot of people are comparing him to Calvin. But come on, Calvin was a way better athlete because he had 30 more pounds and ran just as fast and tested just as well. So we can slow our horses a little bit on the most athletic wide receiver ever. But with that, those are all the reasons why we decided to take him here at 122. Obviously, he has some issues. He needs some help with his routes and all those things. But when you have that frame, that athletic ability, I think it's worth taking a pick here in the fourth round as the team that needs receivers. So with that, the Chargers are on the clock with pick 123.
Yeah, after not having a pick for 7 picks in a row, I have the next 4. So,
Sick.
excuse me. Anyone, at least in terms of anyone, if Jace or Ryan need to take a bathroom break. Oh, Ryan's already gone. Okay. And then, I'm like, you got a minute. At pick 123, I have the Chargers selecting Breenan Thompson. Probably did not say that one right, but out of Mississippi State. Um, he is a very fast. I mean, he should be. He's only 5'9", 165. I might say, significantly undersized. That it might be a hindrance, but there's always been some small guys in the league that have really made it work, like Wes Welker and such. He is very fast. He is what I would deem sprinter speed, big time deep threat. But due to his size, he has fallen to this point this late in the draft, I should say. And with Lad McConkey already there and kind of being slightly undersized himself, I know it is not per se the type of receiver they might be looking for right now. But at this point in time, I think you can add a talented receiver, still a deep threat, a return man. And he did run a 4.26 40, so I mean he does have some elite speed.
Yeah, obviously he's undersized, but like you said, the elite speed. I will say, I don't know if I would say Lad McConkey is undersized.
Is he
Six
bigger
foot
than I think?
190. He's 6 foot 190, so he's probably like
I thought he was around
average.
5'9", 5'10", so yeah, okay, he's
Oh,
at least
okay.
average.
So
I,
I
I
mean,
did
but
think he
I
was
do get your
smaller than
point.
that, so
Yeah.
I
But either way,
I
Thompson has that insane speed, so he'll be able to take
yeah,
the top
Thompson
off.
is just a pure burner. Think I mean, he wasn't much. Oh, he was somewhat of a receiver. I guess it just 2 second comparison in my head that I did not have before that. Maybe like a Darren Sproles, small guy but just
Maybe.
quick. Like I said, I'm like
Yeah,
just two
possibly.
seconds off the top of my head. Um,
Um, However, with that, the Jaguars are now on the clock with pick 124.
with Jaguars, I go back to the trenches because I stayed way too far away for those for too long, having one pick that wasn't. Um, I went with Isaiah World, tackle from Oregon, 6'5", 320. He has very good athleticism for a tackle, which seems to be just the bread and butter of Oregon, as the Lions have a very athletic Oregon tackle. He was the number one transfer portal player last year, and I kind of feel like I don't quite want to say steal, but this is, I think, a bargain in this spot for Jacksonville, who needs, I would say, significant help on the O-line.
Yeah, he definitely was ranked higher than this coming into the season. But we have seen multiple players kind of go up and down the board. So I will say, talent wise, excuse me, talent wise, it is good value here. With that, the Patriots are on the clock with pick 125.
And I'm going to stick with the trenches even after taking Pregnon in the first round. I'm going to go Cage Casey here, the guard from Boise State. Similar to what I've said for all of these young quarterbacks, you got to protect Drake May. The Patriots specifically slash especially um, really struggled in their offensive line. I don't know if Casey would even start right off the gate, but he has a very high, what I would deem like developmental trait. Not saying that he couldn't potentially play right away, but I do see him definitely playing at least year two, year three, and so on and so forth. He's most likely going to kick into guard, I feel like, at the next level, but he has had 28 career starts at left tackle in case they do have any further question marks with Will Campbell, who I personally think he's going to be fine long term, but a little bit of insurance never hurts.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. And like we always say, you can't hurt adding to the trenches. So with that, the Bills are on the clock with pick 126.
And the Bills are going to stay in the trenches. After losing McGovern, they're going to go ahead and take Billy Scarith. I probably destroyed that last name too.
They didn't lose McGovern.
Who was the other guard? Sorry, they re-signed
Oh,
McGovern. You're right.
yeah, yeah,
They lost the other one. Sorry, they
yeah.
re-signed
Oh my
McGovern over
gosh,
him.
I can't think of his name right now. I'll look it up. But anyway, go ahead.
But yeah, they lost their starting guard. Sorry, I thought it was McGovern because they both hit free agency, but they re-signed McGovern and let the other one go. But yeah, they take the Notre Dame guard here, 6'5", 315. In my opinion, once again, not trying to beat a dead horse, um, you can never go wrong with too many trenches. Sklareth is much more of a fluid guard. He's very good at pulling and trapping, so I feel like he has a little bit of a different skill set that Buffalo uses more often than some other teams.
Yeah, and like we always say, it doesn't hurt to add to the trenches. And with that, I'm struggling to. Oh, Austin Corbett. Okay, that's
There you
the
go.
guard that they lost. Um, with that, the 49ers are now on the clock with pick 127.
Well, like I said, we could clip that clip from James early on where he talked about the defensive tackle. I feel like we need another clip for the offensive line here, and then we just replay that trenches wise. But yeah, kind of same thing. This was San Francisco on the clock. They had paid attention to the defense with the first couple picks. They do have a gap, kind of like the Lions do, so they didn't pick for basically 70 picks at this point, and ended up going with Drew Shelton. Penn State, another guy that kind of like World seemed like he was pretty highly regarded, but it didn't necessarily go quite as high as maybe initial projections, and thought he would be a solid depth piece that they can work into their line, which has obviously been a good system and has some good players, but they need to replenish a little bit. They're losing depth. They have a cap situation where they're losing some depth and need to fill in that depth chart a little bit.
Yeah, and like we've talked many times, getting good value here in these mid rounds. It's really all about depth. So not really any of these players are going to be day one starters, and if they are, that's a home run scenario. So with that, the Lions are now on the clock with pick 128, and here we're going to kind of go away from what some people might assume the Lions will do here in the fourth round. I'm going to take a running back. And simply because of the player that's available, I really, really like the player. Katron Allen, running back from Penn State. I think he is the perfect David Montgomery replacement. Obviously, we did sign Pacheco, but he's not the long term answer. It was a 1 year, $1 million deal. Like, yeah, he could be a solid backup running back, but I'm also not 100% sold that Pacheco is the answer at RB2, and I think that's why they gave him such a low deal. And call me crazy, I would rather have Katron Allen as my RB2 and then Pacheco as our like RB3. He can kind of spell both of those guys simply because the injury, scenario that Pacheco had with both his knee and his ankle, or his yeah, his knee and his ankle.
Yeah.
So he's got some things to come back from, and obviously he played last year. But Katron Allen, I think, is a can't miss mid round running back that I think. Obviously, he doesn't have top end speed. He's not going to be a breakaway guy. He's not a guy you're drafting to be a workhorse by any means, but he is the perfect 1-2 punch. The two in that scenario with Jahmyr Gibbs as our power back. So I just love this pick. Obviously, he lacks some shiftiness, but he makes up for it with really high level vision and power. So Katron Allen to the Lions at 128. And then, like I said before, we'll open it up here because this is a Lions show. Ryan, I know James went first last time. Ryan, what are your? Or no, I'm sorry, Ryan went first. James, what are your thoughts here for the Lions?
Oh, I was saying I'm fine with him going first, but I love it just because, as you mentioned, and I like Pachenko, but as you mentioned, it's a 1 year deal, and he has quite a bit of wear and tear on him. Allen was not kind of, he was used in a dual back system in Penn State, so he has much fresher legs, and then we'll obviously use him as in a reserved slash rotational role here as well. So I'm all for rotating running backs, D line, you name it pretty much, other than quarterback and O line. But yeah, he's in my opinion what we need long term for the number 2 running back. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he had a 150-yard game last year, something around there at least. And then I did look up earlier when I was looking up at running backs, and he averaged more than 5 yards a carry on the season. So I mean, I can't complain one bit. I would love to have him in here.
Yeah, and I think before Pacheco got signed, most people wanted Allen to be drafted in the 4th round by the Lions. So I don't think it's crazy by any means. Also, small tidbit, I was able to see Allen and Singleton live, not this last year, but the year before in the Big Ten championship game. And man, I fell in love with both of them during that game. So, however, Ryan, do you have anything to add there before we move on?
Yeah, I think this is a convalescence of two things that are underrated in the draft. Not only our draft, but I do think it's mirroring the actual draft, which is there's a lot of running backs for as many teams that are doing 2-back systems nowadays. I think running backs inherently get a little undervalued once you get past that first. Obviously, level will be very high, but you're going to see here there's going to be a little bit of a run on running backs because there's some good values here, and I think he's at the top for the Lions. He's still being mocked to the Lions, but where I say it's a combination of kind of undervalue to nature to this pick, I think a lot of the Penn State guys are undervalued given what happened there this year. That there was a talented team. Obviously, they had a coaching change. They had some issues there. They had injuries. But I do think that a lot of these guys that are going throughout the draft, that's why I drafted Shelton earlier, but obviously you got Allen and then Singleton still on the board, Dennis Sutton. There's a lot of guys that I think are going to be a little bit undervalued just because the team as a whole didn't get the platform that people thought they would at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and for sure. And to piggyback off your first point there, I wanted to go linebacker here. Do not get me wrong. The Lions need a linebacker. However, with how many linebackers have been taken to, the running backs that have been taken, I just thought, let's take a player who might not be a need just because he's that much better, I thought, than the next linebacker. So with that, the Chicago
Quick
Bears
fact
are now on.
check.
Yeah.
Sorry, because I'm like, I think he had a 150-yard game this year, so I looked it up. He had 3 of them to
Mhm.
end the season, and he had 2 140-yard games. So yeah, there's a handful of games where he completely took over But I will say, for a nod for Ryan, when they played Indiana, he was held to only 48 yards. So,
Appreciate you putting that plug in there, James.
Yeah, Indiana seemed to do that to everybody this year. Watching, I cannot remember what quarterback it was, but there was a recent quarterback, and Ryan, you'd probably know because the Indiana DC had a comment about it on Twitter. The quarterback basically said the Indiana defense didn't do anything special; they just did it perfect every play. And he basically was saying, we just couldn't run the ball at all, so we were forced to throw it. So I think that's something that you know. Uh, Opponents of IU had to deal with a lot this year. So, with that, the Bears are now on the clock with 129, and we are going to go with VJ Payne, the safety out of Kansas State. Okay, I put KSU, and I'm like, it's not Kennesaw. So, um, Kansas State. Obviously, VJ Payne is a guy who I think lacks a little bit of the high IQ stuff you'd want from a safety. However, he has the frame, the length, the run defense. And obviously he ran a very, very good 4.4 or 40 being in the 4.3s. Like I said, though, lacks some of the IQ stuff, but he's got all the physical intangibles. He lacks some twitch that you'd like to see out of a safety, and the pure technical coverage ability, and also the zone stuff. Because like I said, I think he lacks a little bit of that IQ. But if we can get him coached up, those athletic traits are very, very high level. So that's why we took him there. And then next we have the Dolphins with pick 130. And the Dolphins have a ton of picks. We have taken almost every position of need so far. We've got a corner, a receiver, a guard, a safety, another receiver, two edges. So we're going to go with a safety here in Bishop Fitzgerald. My opinion, one of the best ball hawks in this class, period. Very high IQ. He's kind of the opposite of what I just talked about with Payne, which I think the Dolphins, went with a smarter player because they need a little bit more help now, whereas the Bears, they can kind of, develop Payne's athletic abilities. But with that said, he does lack a little bit of the length and the run defense, but he has a very high IQ and he is a ball hawk, a true free safety, in my opinion. So the Dolphins are very happy with the value there. Now the Patriots are on the clock with pick 131.
yeah, I just had flashbacks to Fitzgerald. I know he had a two-int game against Michigan, so yeah. Okay, Patriots at 131. We will take staying in the trenches. Demetrius Crownover from Texas A&M. Just keep as I was saying with the last pick. I know I went guard last time with Gage Casey. Just keep adding to that line. It looked bad, really bad, but I don't want to be too down on them since I already talked about it 4 picks ago. This is just another good athlete you can put in the line. This one, however, I will say he is much more of a road grader in my opinion. So he has, I would say, at least average pass blocking, but I feel like he really excels in the run game, which is the opposite of some of the other guys we've talked about in this draft.
Yeah, and like we've always said many times, it's always nice to add to the trenches. And like you said, the Patriots O line definitely has struggled throughout this season. So good pick up there. Now the Saints are on the clock with pick 132. I believe that was you, right, James?
I was hoping he was muted.
No, no, Saints are me. Sorry, we haven't picked in a while. It's the Saints. Um, ba, 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 ba. 1 second. I minimized my menu after crown over. Okay, 132. I have the Saints taking Dejon Stribling, a wide receiver from Ole Miss, and not saying this just because it's so generic, but he is a very fast and decently sized receiver at 6'2". The Saints need a little bit of everything, just much like the Titans and Dolphins, and in a weird way, a lot of teams in the league. But at the same time, with so much parity in the league, I feel like looking through this draft, I didn't realize how many teams had that many holes. So I find that decently intriguing. But I feel like he's a guy who can potentially be the starting X receiver even in year one. And he had back-to-back 800-yard seasons for Ole Miss, so I feel like he will fit in nicely there for. I'm spacing on their quarterback.
Shuck.
Shuck. Yes.
Yeah, and I think good value there, and obviously the Saints need some receiver help. So now we have the Niners on the clock with pick 133.
Yeah, the Niners had an interesting draft as far as how they were slotted. They had their kind of traditional first and second round picks late in the rounds, and then they really didn't have anything. Now they have 4 picks in 13 here. They have the 127, 133, 138, 139. So 133, I decided to kind of go into one of the areas that we were talking about, maybe having a little bit of a glut of good players at the running back position. I did like Allen better than him, but Emmett Johnson is right in that same class out of Nebraska. I felt like he would be a perfect fit for the San Francisco system. So I ended up going with him, and I think he's a plug and play guy that they always need a second guy behind McCaffrey. I know they have McCaffrey there, but they seem to have a good farm system where you definitely need a second guy, especially because McCaffrey has a bit of an injury history. And with the 49ers, they can keep churning him out. And then knowing their luck, they'll probably end up trading him because he'll end up doing well when McCaffrey's out and then trade him to another team. But I thought that was a good fit for their system.
Yeah, and we've definitely seen that happen before a few times now with, Christian McCaffrey backups going elsewhere. Now, with that, the Raiders are on the clock with pick 134.
So this is a guy that I've had my eye on for a while because he's been one that's been kind of tied to the Lions. If this was a slot, they would be interested in this particular position. But I had them taking Tyreek Sapp out of Florida, kind of an edge combo, a heavy edge type guy, built in the image of the Lions. I thought he would fit well in a defensive line that, I don't know, is kind of in flux, but not in flux in Vegas because they've had the Max Crosby thing, but they obviously need some help in addition to him, and trying to hit as many needs as I can for the number one overall team. But I thought Sapp was a nice value here. And as I said, for a lot of the teams, I ended up pairing guys from the colleges together. So I went Barber and Sapp back to back. So they have a little continuity when they go into camp together.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that selection.
For what it's worth, the Lions did meet with Sapp at the combine.
Yeah, he's been a common link to them, I feel like, just in general.
Yeah, definitely, and for all the reasons you mentioned, Ryan. With that, 135, or I'm sorry, the Steelers are now on the clock with pick 135, and we go running back as well. This time, we're going to go with Damon Claiborne, running back from Wake Forest. Personally, really like him as an athlete. Obviously, he has some, size issues. He needs to add a little bit of mass in general to be a true running back in the NFL. However, I like him as a pure weapon in this offense. Obviously, Jalen Warren, Caleb Johnson, Rico Dowdle are probably going to play a lot of the pure running back snaps. But I think Claiborne, offers some high-level speed to a running back room that just doesn't really have a lot of it. I mean, Jalen Warren is probably the fastest guy in that room, and he's like a 4.5 40 guy. So finally, the Steelers have some breakaway speed in their running back room. Now, the Saints are on the clock with pick 136.
Speaking of speed, it's a great segue. Excuse me. I have the Saints taking Caleb Proctor, Louisiana Lafayette D tackle, and speed and D tackles are not normally something said in the same sentence. But he ran the 40 in 4.79, and he led the entire conference with 9 sacks from the D tackle position, which, I mean, I don't really have to tell you how rare that is, especially at the college level. And he met with all 32 teams, or I should say all 32 teams went to his private workout. So he's a name, even though he went to a smaller college, that I would definitely keep an eye on. But he is undersized, as you may imagine, with speed being like his main trait. He's 6'2", 290, and I feel like on the inside of a D line at the NFL level, unless you have like elite hands, you can get pushed around a little bit with that size. But this late in the draft, and the Saints having so many needs, I have no problem as the Saints GM taking him here and seeing what he's got.
For sure. And with that, the Eagles are now on the clock with pick 137.
So we've talked about how they have a decent amount of depth and kind of have the luxury of adding pieces that are maybe a little undervalued. Their secondary is still a little strange to me. They added a safety in their early rounds here with Halsey, but I felt like they needed some reinforcements at corner, even though they have been. It's a position that they constantly try to acquire more players at, but it seemed like they needed another body in that room. So with corner being lagging a little bit in the draft, ended up going with Will Lee of Texas A&M, guy that can, I think, slot in and give them some depth there and learn from some of the other guys. And they seem to go with, even though they've spent a lot of resources on their secondary, both in free agency and the draft, but they also seem to not ever be satisfied with what they get, even though they've relatively speaking allocated a lot of resources to that particular room.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you there. With that, we have the Niners on the clock with back-to-back picks, 138 and 139.
This is the swan song for the 49ers. They're done after these two picks, but again, hitting two things that I think have been kind of undervalued. I could play my little bits that I've been saying throughout the draft, but Penn State guys, we talked about that. So Zane Durant, defensive tackle out of Penn State. I thought he was an undervalued guy, needed some help in the trenches there for the 49ers, a team that has focused a lot on their defense, but they're missing a decent amount of pieces there. And then I also think they need some help in the secondary, so I ended up going Jacoby Thomas out of Miami. We mentioned this on a previous iteration, but talked about how the Miami and IU guys were feeling that they're a little bit underrated. So I thought Thomas played very well for a top end defense, and I think he'll slot in nicely with San Francisco losing some key parts of their secondary here. They needed to rebuild, so now they got Terrell and Thomas to kind of round out the draft.
Yeah, and with that, goodbye 49ers, as we will not see you again throughout this video or the next video where they do not have any more draft picks. Now, with that, we are on the final selection of the fourth round, and the Jets are on the clock. And we're going to go with Hezekiah Masses, the corner from Cal. Personally, I think he's a super underrated player. He's got the frame, the speed, 6'1", 190, ran a 4.46, I believe. And he's got really high level technique. Like I said, his speed is really, really solid. And he's got some special teams ability as well. So a team, drafting him here, obviously he might not play some high level corner snaps this year for us, but he has the ability to help out on special teams as well. And his run defense is solid. He has the want to be a run defender. His tackling just is not very good. And obviously he has a lack of mass, being only like 185. So it makes it hard for him to, consistently bring down ball carriers. And then his ball skills are just a little iffy. But with all that said, I like the value here at 140. And with that, that ends the fourth round of this mock draft, or MFN NFL draft, I guess is the best way to put it, because this is more of a simulation than a true mock draft. But with that, we're going to take a quick break. So James and Ryan, bathroom break, if needed now would be a good time. I know I need it. So with that, really quickly before we get out, I'll do a quick ad. So obviously today we're not sharing our screen. I did that for a plethora of reasons, but the big thing is Stick to the Model has been awesome for us throughout this process. they have their Be a GM mode, they have their mock simulator, and both of them are very, very good. I think using the premium, obviously you get some more perks. So we are speaking as people who have a premium account, because I do think it is worth it to have. With that said, the Be a GM model has completely taken over social media for the past few months. As we get closer to the draft, as the offseason goes on, it's really shown to be a very high level tool for doing simulations. And now they added a little bit more stuff, so where you can, as you go through the draft and the free agency, the offseason as a whole, there's a lot more stuff for you to do, a lot more customization, and you can even uh, simulate through the season. So that's pretty cool to see. And with that, we will be right back as we take a quick bathroom break. So this is a good time for you guys to take a break as well, and we will be right back. And we are back after a quick break, quick ad break, quick pee break. I hope everyone got what they needed out of that. With that being said, the 5th round is officially open, and this one we're going to even go a little bit more quick fire, rapid fire on these picks, because this 5th round has a little bit more picks than the rest of the rounds. So in order to get this done in the time, we got to go a little bit faster. So bear with us, people, as we try our best to give some solid analysis while also staying within, a solid time. Now, with that, the Texans are now on the clock with pick 141, the first pick of the 5th round. And we are going to go ahead and take another offensive tackle, Jude Bowery out of Boston College. Really, at the end of the day, this guy has all the athletic traits. He's got the size. His technique is just not that great. And at the end of the day, I think if you have a good offensive line coach, you can definitely work on that technique. So I feel pretty good taking Bowery here with the first pick of the 5th round. And with that, the Tennessee Titans are now on the clock with pick 142.
The Titans are thrilled with this upcoming pick. We will take Tim Keenan the third. Not only am I the third, but sorry, terrible joke. Although it's true. But he eats double teams all day, and especially putting him next to Simmons, that will be a very interesting interior D line. He is a huge player. He can get into the backfield even while getting double teamed. He had 7 tackles for loss and 3 sacks from the D tackle position, so he's nothing to really scoff at. And I'm kind of surprised that he fell this late.
Yeah, and I am also a big fan of Tim Keenan, and I am also somewhat surprised he fell all the way to the 5th round. Now, the Cardinals are on the clock here with pick 143, and we are going to go interior offensive line. We're going to go with Matt Golbin, the center out of Michigan State. Obviously, not necessarily a high ceiling player here, but I do think he has some ability to become a starter in the next few years. Obviously, he's at the end of the day, he's not a great athlete, but he takes good angles. He's got a good base, and he's got some veteran presence and some versatility. So we feel pretty happy here taking him in the 5th. In the 5th round. Now, the Titans are back on the clock here with pick 144.
This time we're going to go on offense. We'll go Sam Roush, tight end from Stanford. He is a massive individual, 6'6", 270. And I feel like if need be, he could play a little bit of X but I do like him a little bit more in line for the matchup comparisons. But some people do have him listed as a receiver, so I guess he is more of a like a joker, kind of like an Eric Ebron. Hopefully he has a better career than him, but um, that type of tight end.
Yeah, and with that, the Giants are now on the clock with pick 145.
So I think this fell nicely. We already talked about this player, so I don't need to cover him a ton. But kind of like you guys were saying with Keenan, a guy that I don't know if he's going to reach the fifth round, but Nick Singleton, running back out of Penn State, he's the other half of that tandem with Allen. Talked about the Penn State guys being underrated, and I think they're going to need a pairing with Scadaboo because although he's got a very likable playing style. I don't think it's necessarily a good fit for a ton of carries, and you don't know what his endurance is going to be. So this is a nice pairing and kind of right sizes the running back room like we try to do with the receiver room for the Giants.
Yeah, and I love Singleton personally. Obviously, 2 years ago, people were talking about he might be a first round pick. And obviously, that is not the case. But getting him here in the fifth round, I think, is really good value. And the Giants make a ton of sense for him there. So, with that, the Browns are now on the clock with pick 146.
One of my favorite picks in the whole draft and one of my favorite prospects in the whole draft. At 146, the Browns were taking Nadami Tuck. Ah, oh my gosh, this is not even a hard name. I know this guy's local. Nadami Tucker from Western Michigan. Ultra productive. 14 sacks and 41 hurries last year. The only downside, at least without going into too much details, because I know we're trying to wrap this up, is he played at Western Michigan, so he did not play against the elite of the elite. So while his stats are ultra impressive, he did it against some players that a lot of guys on this list ahead of him could have had those similar stats against similar competitions, potentially. But another guy who played for a smaller Michigan school who was taken at the end in the later rounds was Max Crosby, and he's had a pretty good NFL career. So we'll see about that, what happens with Tucker here.
Yeah, and with that, obviously, the small school thing could always be an issue, but this is the fifth round, so I think it's solid value there. Now the Commanders are on the clock with pick 147, and here we decide to go with a wide receiver. We're gonna go with Reggie Virgil out of Texas Tech. Smooth, athletic, really good at a high point catching. However, at 6'3", 190, it's not like it's a big deal, but you could see a little bit more weight on his frame. And then with that, too, he's not a great separator. So that's neither here nor there. But in the fifth round, I think with his athletic upside, you can also, teach him how to run routes a little bit better. So with that, the Chiefs are now on the clock with pick 148.
So, as the whole world knows at this point, obviously Travis Kelce, one of the most famous NFL players, is on his way out at some point. They need some tight end help, both in line and then succession plan for him. So, I ended up going with Eli Raridan out of Notre Dame. Good size, really a pretty good prospect, but has some injury history that probably will scare people down to a little bit of a later round. But I thought that the fifth round was good for him. And again, kind of like the Chris Jones thing, if you've got somebody like Travis Kelce, you want to put somebody in there that can potentially learn from them and then get that value from the teachings before he inevitably moves on to whatever television shows and things he's going to host, and get Raridan in there to have the connection with Mahomes that Kelce did.
Yeah, a succession plan is always smart, especially when it's two of your best players on your entire team. Now the Browns are on the clock with pick 149.
Yeah, with the Browns here at 149, I have them taking Keyshawn Elliott, the linebacker from Arizona State. I feel like he's I'm not saying this just to have a theme, but a little bit underrated, just because there's a ton of outside linebackers that are good at blitzing. He is very good at blitzing from the inside. He had 7 sacks and 14 TFLs and just shy of 100 tackles. He had 98 tackles. And pairing him up in the linebacker room with current rookie defensive player of the year from Oh my God, I'm spacing on his name. He won Defensive Rookie of the Year, linebacker for the Browns.
Oh my gosh.
Swagger.
Oh my gosh.
Give
I'll
me
look
10
it up.
seconds.
Carson Schweiger.
Yes.
Swagger. Thank you. I'm like Swagger. I'm like, I know I'm not far off here. Yes, but to pair him with him and obviously put him on the same defense as Miles Garrett, you don't really need help getting to the quarterback, but you can never have too much at the same time anyway. So picking this late and also adding him to the same defense I just added Nademi Tucker to, I think the Browns would enjoy their new defense, even though they already had a good defense to begin with.
Yeah, and I agree. I think he is a bit underrated. Now we have the Saints on the clock with pick 150.
I took him before anyone else could. I'll just say that much. The Saints here would take Keelan Black, running back from Indiana. I don't know if I should talk about him or if I should let Ryan talk about him.
Well, I thought you meant Jace was going to take him with his pick. That's what I thought you meant. For him.
But
Yeah, it fits in with the theme with the underrated running backs, I think.
yeah, I feel like he definitely kind of goes underrated. He had over 2,000 career yards, which I feel like is a mark that not too many running backs nowadays will have, especially with people coming out so early, or for sure almost no one stays the 4 years anymore. Uh, so yeah, sorry, I got more to say, but I'm just like I need to keep it short, so I'll end it there.
Yeah, I definitely hear you. It's always tough because it's like, oh man, I want to say everything about this player. And then it's like, well, if we take 3 minutes per player, we have, 85 players. So that'll take
Exactly. So I'm
time.
like,
Do the
and
math on that
also
one.
I'm like, oh, never mind.
Exactly. Now the Dolphins are on the clock with pick 151, and here we are going to keep the tight end theme going. We are going to take tight end Jack Endries out of Texas. Obviously, okay. The synopsis of him is he's a perfect number two tight end. Not an awesome blocker, not an awesome receiver, but he's pretty good at both things. He's got solid hands, solid athlete, but again, he's not going to wow you really in any of those aspects. So we'll go ahead and snag what hopefully will be our number two tight end for the next 10 years, because that's kind of what I see with Endry. So now the Cowboys are on the clock with pick 152.
Cowboys are going to add to their receiver room. They're going to take Josh Cameron, wide receiver from Baylor. I feel like he excels against zone defenses. I feel like he does lack a little bit of separation problems. However, one bright side of that is he's amazing at contested catches, but I feel like he thrives against the zone defense. But picking in the middle of the fifth round here, I mean, obviously none of these guys are, far and away above everyone else, but he definitely has tools that you can work with, especially adding them to the receiving room. He's not going to be asked to even be a wide receiver one or two as a rookie, so I feel like he'll fit in and make an impact in his rookie season.
Yeah. With that, the Packers are up at 153.
So they need some offensive line help. I think some reinforcements. Not a lot of centers slipped in our particular draft, but I have heard a lot about Jagger Burton of Kentucky. I feel like he's a guy that could be kind of that gritty type of mold that the Lions like, but also that would be well suited for Green Bay. Also got to watch how well some of his counterparts did. Farmer went already. You got McGowan that had a great year. I think Burton deserves a lot of credit for how that worked there in Kentucky. So solid running game, a good value, I think, in the fifth round for him, and a reinforcement for Green Bay, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, with that, the Ravens are now up at pick 154.
Much like Dallas, the Ravens going to take a receiver as well. I have them taking Eric McAllister, wide receiver from TCU, and he is, in my opinion, kind of the opposite of some of the other guys I've taken with some of these other teams. He's a big body, 6'3", 205, and I feel like he's what is missing for that Ravens offense in terms of having like a true X receiver. And they have guys like Flowers and some shifty guys, but they do lack that tall jump ball receiving guy, so they would take one here.
Yeah, and like you said, they definitely do lack that right now in that offense. So with that, the Bucks are now up at 155.
So obviously they stole a couple players from the Lions. They have some similar systems to them and similar needs, I think, and types. They got Anzalone at linebacker, but I thought a succession plan or somebody that could learn from him and maybe even play next to him would be good. And this is a linebacker I like. I like some of the linebackers in this area of the draft. So Bryce Botcher of Oregon. Thought he was a good fit for the Buccaneers and could kind of develop in their system and maybe be the succession plan to Anzalone, or like I said, be next to Anzalone. But they're always going to want to reload their defense.
Yeah, definitely. With that, the Colts are now up at 156. And we are going to go ahead and take one of my favorite players in this draft, Travis Burke, the tackle from Memphis, at 6'9", 325 pounds. He's very similar to another player that I took earlier in terms of just absolute behemoth of a man. However, I also really like his play. He is pretty raw. He doesn't have, above average athleticism for an NFL tackle. However, he's very patient and very powerful. So I think, giving him some more teaching with his frame and everything like that, even I think he could even add 10 to 20 more pounds on his frame, honestly, to get a little bit more power there. So I really like the value here for us. Obviously not going to be our starting tackle next year, but when Terrence Steele inevitably leaves after the season, most likely, we might have a succession plan. So now the Lions are on the clock with pick 157. And we are going to go ahead and go with defensive back Michael Ta'afe from Texas. Now, not a high level athlete. However, I think some people were a little bit surprised at his testing. It was a little bit better than a lot of people thought. Not a super coverage, like rangy guy. Definitely more of an in the box safety, but he has some explosivity and a very high motor, and he is a good run defender. So I think this fits well for what the Lions are looking for. Now, the Panthers are up with back to back selections at 158 and 159.
So kind of what I said about Botcher kind of applies to this next guy. James has been making fun of me all through the draft for being an Indiana guy, but I have seen a lot of Aiden Fisher, and he might be a little undersized, but he's a very good running back linebacker who really has a lot of skills and athleticism. I think he could play bigger than what he's been kind of attributed to, and I think he's a good fit in Carolina. They need some linebacker help, and then Jason Canaday, the cornerback out of Oregon, a guy that's flexible, can play multiple positions, kind of fill in because Carolina again it needed a bunch of different things. So since I didn't really address either the linebacker room or the secondary, I felt like I took two versatile players that can kind of fill multiple needs for them at the back part of the draft.
Definitely. With that, the Packers are now up at pick 160.
Sorry, let's see. We got Packers. I got to scroll down.
Hunter.
Wait, yeah, we don't have punters. You said the Packers are on at 160? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't have that one written down. Hold on. I got to go to my backup list. Oh yeah, that's right. I got him as the wrong pick. So kind of similar. Just talked about this guy, so I don't need to cover him a ton. Seth McGowan paired him with his center. They need some depth there at running back. Obviously, they've got Josh Jacobs rolling in Green Bay, but McGowan I felt like would be a good counterpart to him. And again, trying to pair those college players and give them a softer landing in the NFL.
Yeah, and they definitely could use some running back depth over there. Now we have the Steelers up at pick 161. And I think, one of the more underrated players in the entire draft here, Damani Jackson, the defensive back from Alabama. Obviously has some versatility playing both safety and corner. Definitely more of like a man coverage press corner kind of guy. Very lengthy build. However, he is very inconsistent. and has some issues kind of all around technique wise. So obviously he's a good athlete with the range and the length that you would want. However, just super inconsistent. So hopefully the Steelers can get a little bit more out of him with his consistency. Now we have the Ravens up with pick 162.
Yeah, the Ravens are known for having massive linebackers, so I'm going to give them another one here. Lander Barton, linebacker from Utah, he is 6'5", 240. He is a big guy in the middle there, and for his size, he has really good coverage skills. And I feel like, Doug, once again trying to keep this down, for his size and athleticism, he is a pretty good athlete. And I feel like he uses his length efficiently with PBUs and whatnot. And I feel like he will be a pretty good asset with this Ravens defense.
For sure. With that, we now have the Vikings on the clock with pick 163.
The Vikings are mad that I stole my own pick from myself because they would like Barton as well. But they're going to go with Tyreen York, inside linebacker from Texas A&M, because they are looking at um, inside linebackers as well. They need to add to that defense. They lost a lot of guys with free agency. And I feel this late in the draft, you can draft on some traits, or I should say, some things you don't normally look at earlier in the draft. And he is the kind of the opposite of the traits, is which is why I backpedaled from that. He doesn't have a great athletic profile, but he has a very good production score, and he just kind of gets things done, even if he doesn't run the fastest, and just kind of has that knack for the ball.
Yeah, and you just took two linebackers in Lander Barton and Torian York that the Lions would have liked at pick 181. So we are not too happy with that. And those are two of my favorite, late round guys. I think because they both are on opposite ends of the spectrum. Really, like you said, York is more of like a production guy that doesn't really have the gifts. He's not really big. He's like 5'11". And then Barton is kind of the opposite, 6'5", 260, not the most agile guy, but has that frame that you want. So Lions are
Can
not
we
too happy
combine them?
there. Right. um, very true. With that, we now have the Jaguars at pick 164.
Oh, I did not. Okay. Sorry, we're in the middle of my 5 picks in a row here. The Jaguars here, I have them taking defensive lineman Demonte Capehart from Clemson. And to be honest, I don't know too much about him. He's just ranked the highest D end that is available and for a team that needs D ends. I did see just by looking up box scores, because I'm not going to pretend to know what I'm talking about if I don't. I do see he has versatility in terms of being a 4-3 under or a 3-4 D end. Um, so they do have versatility, and Jacksonville kind of does like those more fluctuating D linemen, kind of like Josh Haynes Allen and Walker, linebacker D end hybrid.
Yeah, and then with that, we have the Bills at pick 165.
Bills, I'm going to stick with linebackers, Jack Kelly from BYU. And I feel like he is a riser through this process, because I know earlier on, a lot of people were talking about him being seventh round, maybe even potentially undrafted. And I feel like he's just been going up and up. I feel like he might even sneak into the end of the fourth round, because just the way everything is trending. But he is a good um, very athletic outside linebacker, kind of like I mentioned with Barton being the inside guy, Kelly's the outside guy. He has almost 23 and a half TFLs, 15 sacks, and he can use his size and speed, leverage, I should say, to get to the quarterback and cause some havoc in the backfield.
Yeah. And with that, we wrap up your run of picks with the Jaguars at 166.
One of my favorite players this late in the draft, and another Indiana guy, so sorry, Ryan. Pat Coogan, center. Uh, excuse me. I'll take him here for Jacksonville because, as I've mentioned before, you can never have too many trenches. He transferred from Notre Dame. He is just constantly consistent. like obviously those are contradictory slash statements, but he is just Mr. Consistent over and over again. One of the best centers in college football over the last 3 years, not just a 1 or 2 year guy that kind of came out of nowhere. Um, he was on the I mean they lost, but he was on the national championship team for Notre Dame that year, and then won it with Indiana. So he has a ton of experience and just gets the job done.
Yeah, and we've talked about Coogan quite a bit in our group chat for this mock. So he was definitely a guy all three of us would have liked to get around this area. So with that, the Texans are now on the clock with pick 167. And we are going to go ahead and go with a tight end, kind of keep the tight end run going here in this fourth and fifth round. We're going to go Justin Jolly out of NC State. I really like Jolly to fit this offense because he's more of like a yak guy. He's like that, move tight end that everybody talks about being more of a slot receiver. Obviously, not much of a blocker, but he is a big guy. So he can kind of run through tackles and things like that. And his routes are a little bit iffy, so he's got some things to work on. But as a number two tight end, I like him here in Houston. And now the Bills are on the clock with pick 168.
Can't get rid of me that fast after going 5 straight, one off, and I'm back. I have the Bills taking J.C. Davis here, tackle from Illinois. As I mentioned in the last podcast, I'll say it again here, just in case you missed it, but go back and watch it. Uh, I'm not the biggest pro football focus guy, but for those that are, he had a 85.6 pro football focus grade, which is the second highest among all tackles in this draft. And for him being in the fifth round, if that is your thing, I mean, hallelujah, what a pick. He also has 42 starts in his uh, college career, and with the exception of one he allowed in week 2, he did not allow a sack the rest of the season. So it is always good when you can have your quarterback protected, especially by someone this late.
Definitely. And now we have the Chiefs on the clock with pick 169, and make it a good one.
Yes, yes, sir. Well, it's funny because we seem to have two groups forming here. You got tight ends and linebackers that are coming off the board because I think those are two positions that kind of slipped a little bit. But Caleb Alarms-Orr from TCU, a super athletic linebacker there. His relative athletic score, I think, was like 9.92. He was in like the top 30 of the thousands of linebackers that have gone through the combine. So real athletic linebacker, getting some depth there with the Chiefs. So I feel like that is a good one because we do have, and we're seeing it. It's already happened, so it's okay to say it. But the linebackers were kind of stacked up at this point, so it was kind of take your pick of who you liked and who you thought was a good fit for your team.
Yeah, definitely. And I just noticed this, but I don't have a pick from 167 to 181. So it's just you guys back to back for the next
I go on quite the
20
run
picks.
here.
So that's gonna be fun. No, with that though, we have the Broncos here with pick 170.
Broncos, I'm going O-line. Surprise, surprise. I'm going to go Bo Stevens from Iowa. He's listed as a guard. He played guard. I wouldn't be completely surprised if they give him a run at tackle. He is 6'5", 320, so he definitely has the length. Solid pass blocking. He did not give up a sack, although that's not normally something I would put too much stock in with guards. Obviously, we talk about interior pressure being terrible, but normally it's the tackles that get that kind of work. But where he really, really excels is his run blocking. He is a absolutely phenomenal lead blocker and gets to the second level very well. And he's another guy that I would kind of in the later rounds have my eye on, and maybe he can be like a fifth or sixth round pick of the Lions for the local people out there. Maybe he can be like the next like Mahogany kind of late lineman.
Yeah, and with that said, we now have the Patriots with pick 171.
Going back to linebackers. This one household name, Jimmy Roller from Michigan. He is kind of just an all-over player. TFL, sacks, kind of whatever you need him to do. Another guy who, for the record, visited with the Lions on a top 30 visit, so just more local ties there. Um, but I feel like he, how do I want to put it, is kind of that glue guy. Like he won't often um, be like the guy, hence why he's going in the fifth round here. But he is a very good leader, and he will kind of tie in everything together. He's definitely someone that you want around your team, and I feel like this late in the draft was kind of his ceiling.
Yeah, and with that, we have the Saints at pick 172.
Saints.
Oh, you're not
I,
done yet, brother. You got a
You,
couple
oh
more.
no,
you can do it, James.
I got two Ravens picks after this. Devin Marshall, cornerback from NC State. The Saints, as I said before, kind of need a little bit of everything. Um, Devin Marshall has uh, each of the last 2 seasons, 2 interceptions in each of the last 2 seasons. But the one thing is kind of contradictory to what I said earlier is for some reason they started throwing to him more last year than they did the year prior because he went from 7 pass breakups in 2024. I almost said 14. No, 2024 to 15 in 2025. So he got tested a little bit more often, and I mean he rose to the occasion. So with 172, I will add him to the corner locker room there.
And with that, you are now on the clock as the Ravens with pick 173 and 174.
All right, now this is a name I might need help with. I looked at him and like maybe I should draft someone else, and I'm like, that's silly. Just do it, dude. So I have the Ravens taking Tyler Onyedim from Texas A&M. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. And who thankfully he is another guy who met with the Lions at the combine, but he is a my apologies if you can hear my dog barking at something out there. He is another guy who has good length and I'd say pocket pushing more than pass rush, but as we have stated with all the D linemen pretty much, or at least all the D tackles in this draft, a much better run stopper than a pass rusher.
Yeah. And with that, you are back up at 174.
Yep. Rounding out my what was this, five? One, two, found another five in a row. I have TJ Hall, cornerback from Iowa. I want to keep adding to that defense as I just did with I'm not gonna say that name again. Tyler from Texas A&M. This time on the outside corners part. He has a elite run defense in my opinion for a corner, and when you say it out loud, it sounds I'll just say a little sus. But his coverage is where he kind of lacks, which sucks for a corner. Like obviously that's not where you want to lack, but I feel like he's obviously at least average when it comes to his coverage game, but like when you put on the film, what really stands out is his run stopping, is and his open field tackling. I'll say that much. He is outstanding at those two areas.
And then we have up next the Raiders with pick 175.
So this is a guy that's kind of been all around the board here. He's been classified as a fullback on some of the systems, but I have them taking Eli Heidenreich. I feel like this could be a good complementary piece to Ashton Genty. Be able to provide some blocking and pass catching help for Fernando and kind of give them a secondary option at running back where they really needed some depth. Obviously, Genty's got a hold on that, but I think they needed some depth, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes because it'll be kind of a team that's specifically looking for that, but a guy that's very accomplished at the college level.
Yeah, and Heidenreich personally is one of my favorite players in this draft. He's also one of the most polarizing. I could see him going as high as like third round and as low as like sixth, seventh round. So I think Heidenreich will get most of his work as a slot receiver that can run the ball in the NFL. So I love the fit there for the Raiders. Now the Chiefs are up at pick 176.
So James said in his 5 pick run that he almost avoided a guy because of the name. This guy's a guard, and James didn't take him. So I'm putting 2 and 2 together. But this is Fabechi Nawaiwu out of Oklahoma, and guard, good player, accomplished player. He won I think he won the Pat Tillman Award in college, and kind of a high character guy. But Kansas City needing some reinforcements on the offensive line. Obviously, keeping Mahomes healthy and upright is the number one priority there. So, putting another player in there with Maui Goa early on.
Yeah, for sure. And then we have the Cowboys at pick 177.
Yeah, the Cowboys here are going to take, in my opinion, a pretty interesting prospect here with Red Murdoch, inside linebacker from Buffalo. He is absolutely outstanding against the run, but then a liability versus a pass. So unfortunately, it's not even um, kind of like, well, at least he's adequate here, but here's where he stands out, kind of like a TJ Hall. He's unfortunately a liability in the pass game, but he has 30 TFLs against the run, 156 tackles over the last two seasons. I'm sorry, 156 tackles in 2024, 142 tackles in 2025. He finished second in college football back-to-back years in tackles and has an NCAA record for 17 forced fumbles in his career. So he's ultra productive, ultra violent on hitting, and can come up from that linebacker spot with quite a bit of authority. But if he were to go up against, I mean, I was going to say Gibbs, but no linebacker can cover Gibbs, so that's unfair. But if he would go up against a pretty shifty running back in coverage, it would be a mismatch and a good day for the offense. So this late in the draft, maybe you can work on him, obviously a little bit. Maybe you can develop him, or maybe with scheme you can work with around some of those areas of need. But he brings enough to the table against the run, in my opinion, that you would at least find a spot for him on first and second downs.
Yeah, and up next we have the Eagles at pick 178.
I think officially the linebacker is the most taken position here in the 5th round, but there are a lot of pretty good ones, even if they do have some weaknesses, obviously in the 5th round. But Justin Jefferson out of Alabama, instinct, high motor linebacker. That I thought would fit well in Philadelphia, give them some depth to play with, because again, they're not drafting a lot of starters in this draft as a whole. It's mostly guys to fill out their depth chart, and I thought he would be a good value for Philadelphia and kind of fit well in that Eagles defense and give them some depth at linebacker, because that is a strong position here in the 5th round.
Yeah, for sure. And with the next team, I was kind of upset with the linebacker run. The Jets are up with pick 179. And we are going to take, I think, one of the most, I know I've said this a few times with my picks, but one of the most underrated players in the draft, Cole Payton, the quarterback out of North Dakota State. Obviously, North Dakota State doesn't help his chances of being drafted high. However, he has some of the best physical traits out of this entire draft class. And to get that this far into the draft at the end of the 5th round, I'm very happy about. He's a very good athlete. Like I said, he's got a lot of traits. Very good arm. Not great, but very good arm. His real issues are processing and the fact that he doesn't have a ton of snaps under his belt. But as a team like the Jets, this is really just a dart throw. I am happy with this pick. And then at 180, we have the Cowboys up.
Is North Dakota, is that where Trey Lance went?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, I haven't seen that school in a little bit, but something rings a bell. That's what it was.
Carson
Okay,
Wentz as well.
Oh, there you go. Well, I mean, it worked out for him. Dallas here at 180. I'm going to take Jamari Taylor, running back from Virginia. I feel getting a rotational back, once again, not to be a dead horse, this late in the draft will be a nice get this late for Dallas, and he adds a little bit in terms of the pass catching outside of the from the backfield. So I feel like he will, with that, stand out over those remaining on the board.
For sure. And last but not least, to round out the fifth round of this mock draft sim, the Detroit Lions at 181, and we're going to go with another tight end. I feel like tight end and linebacker was every other pick in this round.
Huge this round, yeah.
But I mean, in the fifth round, I think that's kind of how it goes. Those are more undervalued positions that realistically probably have more talented players left. But we went with other positions in the fourth round because of positional value. But with that being said, we are going to go with John Michael Gillenborg, the tight end out of Wyoming. In my opinion, another really underrated player. Is he going to be an inline blocking tight end? Definitely not. He's not a guy you're really going to ask to do that. However, the Lions really don't need another guy that can do that with Laporta and Conklin. Gillenborg adds, that high-level athlete, former basketball player. Obviously has some, ability to go up and get it. Very, like I said, high-level athlete in general. The speed, the agility, the explosivity, and all those things. The only real things that I don't love about him is his blocking. And his blocking is really the biggest issue. He has a good separator as a route runner as well. So I think as a receiver, he offers a lot. And that's kind of what the Lions are going to look to add to their tight end room, I think, at this point. But with that being said, that wraps up the fifth round of this podcast or of this mock draft sim and wraps up this podcast. So once again, we always, appreciate you guys for watching. As always, links will be in the description for Fanatics and sticktothemodel.com. Check both of them out. They're very, very useful and good, high-quality tools for what they both offer. With that, Ryan, as always, thank you for joining us once again. Let the people know where to find you before we get out of here.
Yeah, this has been fun. Looking forward to tomorrow's installment here. But Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh and Shane Graham's Extra Points Mondays and Thursdays, 7 to 9 on Jethro. Sports Intel Ryan on X.
Beautiful. And with that, like I said before, links are in the description. We appreciate you guys for watching. As always, you can find me at JSoSweet, James at Gullet_James, and both of us at MIFB Network and MichiganFootballNetwork.com. Before I go, one more thing. We are now on Spotify. So if you like to listen to your podcasts without video, you can do that now with our Spotify profile or page or whatever you want to call it, MIFB Network or Michigan Football Network. Both of those, you can search that into Spotify and it should pull us up. So with that being said, we appreciate you guys for watching.